events in Asia, Latin America, the Middle East, and North Africa, plus again this series of webinars and some targeted news stories on innovative business models. These will be a series of day-long events where in places where interest in media innovation is high, featuring a combination of speakers and participatory discussion. And we'll also have opportunities for entrepreneurs in those countries to pitch their best ideas to the speakers, and we'll be awarding some prizes, cash prizes, along with expert consultations. Today, this webinar is sort of to kick off the series of events and also to kick off this partnership with Civil. And we're delighted to welcome global experts in media entrepreneurship and business. First of all, we've got Larry Ryckman with us, who's editor of the Colorado Sun, one of the independent newsrooms launching in Civil's first fleet. He's a former Moscow correspondent, national editor, and assistant managing editor for the Associated Press. He was most recently senior editor for news to the Denver Post, had top editing gigs in Colorado Springs and Greeley, and again is here sort of as a pioneer of the Civil news platform. Fabiola Torres Lopez is an ICFJ Knight Fellow and co-founder and editor of Ojo Publico, an independent nonprofit Peruvian newsroom known internationally for its award-winning investigative journalism. As an ICFJ Knight Fellow, she's strengthening journalists' digital investigative reporting skills to improve coverage of corruption, transparency, and governance issues in Latin America. We're also thrilled to have with us Alan Soon, Asia's leading expert on newsroom operations, digital transformation, and building the new business of media. He also advises early-stage media startups, and when he's not doing that in his spare time, he was also the co-founder of the Splice Newsroom, which aims to be the hub of the editorial and media community in Asia, inspiring, building, and supporting sustainable media businesses across that region. And last but not least, of course, Madonna Khafaja is the Middle East North Africa lead for the International Center for Journalists and IJNet. As IJNet's Arabic editor and community manager, she edits, translates, and publishes IJNet Arabic language content, and also conducts trainings on developing digital media startups, video shooting techniques, and editing in the Middle East and North Africa region. So what I wanted to start with is turn to Larry and just hear a bit about what's happening with the Colorado Sun, sort of how you got to where you are and what the process that led you from where you were before to setting up a newsroom on the Civil platform.
Yes, thank you, Oren. A group of us had all worked at the Denver Post, and it was a traditional sort of newspaper setup. We were owned by a hedge fund, and over the course of the past few years, we have just seen devastating cuts to our newsroom at the Post. A newsroom that once had 250 to 300 people got cut down to below 60 people. And things continued to spiral downward, and we all decided individually for a variety of reasons to leave. And we felt that there had to be a better way, that there had to be a better model to support local journalism, and there had to be a better way to practice local journalism, because when newsrooms get increasingly small, it gets difficult to do the kind of in-depth watchdog kind of journalism that we feel that communities deserve. So we came together and created the Colorado Sun. There are 10 of us. We have 7 reporters, 3 editors, and we are dedicated to doing investigative, watchdog, explanatory, narrative journalism. And we are not ad supported. We are depending on our readers to support us, and it's been exciting so far. We've had a tremendous outpouring of support from people across the state and, frankly, across the country. Mm-hmm. So we're excited to get rolling.
Right. So I'm curious that before, in the process of deciding to build on the new Civil platform, did you consider other approaches or other either business models or infrastructure before you settled on that one?
Yes, we were, all of us were part of a number of conversations. We were approached by many groups who were, again, struggling to find a new model. And in fact, Denver is kind of a fascinating place right now. We're sort of a laboratory for local media startups. There are several trying to trying to do the work that once upon a time the Denver Post and its dearly departed competitor, the Rocky Mountain News, once performed. So yeah, we looked at other models, but Civil has been a great partner. The model is exciting, and we did not want to go the traditional venture capitalist route and create something that looked very much like the model that we came from. And that's what was exciting about Civil, was this was something entirely new, and it gave us total control over our journalism, which was important.
Right. It sounds to me like a non-advertising supported model was also important. How important is that in the calculation?
It's huge. Particularly at our level, we felt that online advertising had become kind of a digital treadmill where we couldn't run fast enough to generate enough page views to satisfy advertisers. And that is possible when you're at a large scale, such as the New York Times, the Washington Post, or Wall Street Journal in this country. At our level, that just was not possible to generate enough page views to really support a mature newsroom. So, to me and to us, the answer was to count on the readers that we want to serve in any event, and to appeal to them directly to support us.
Interesting. So Fabiola, I want to sort of open it up to you and the rest of the panel, since you're also doing investigative journalism. I'm curious about your thoughts about, trying to build a business without venture capital and without advertising, and what your thoughts on how that might work in your region and in general.
Okay, well, Ojo Público is a website based in Lima. We call that it's a laboratory for investigative journalism. We founded the website in September 2014, and since that time, we got many grants, and we have worked with 10 or 12 organizations or funders, different funders. We, of course, have a lot of incomes from the founders, but it's not the unique way to get money. We want to do investigative journalism in Peru, in South America, and we don't depend from advertisement from the government and, of course, companies, because we think that advertisement is not an alternative now for us, because we want to be more independent. But now, we have a budget that is $160,000 per year, because we are 4 co-founders, 4 journalists at the staff, 1 programmer, freelancers and interns, 1 accountant, and 2 administrative assistants. That's the way we grow as a media. 60% of our money is from grants and fellowships, because the most important way that we got the first time money to do projects come from this source. But we know that this is not sustainability for us. And we're trying to do other ways. For example, we have Ojo Lab, that is a service to train people, to train journalists, and we have money because we have contracts with universities, with organizations, NGOs that wants some kind of courses like fact-checking or investigations. The other way is to do an editorial service, printed editions, books that we can sell. And at the moment, this is there are the 3 principal sources. And of course, we have the club, Ojo Público Friends, that they give money, as eldiario.es in Spain or La Silla Vacía in Colombia. But it's just at the beginning. We need to do more strategies to have the crowdfunding as a strategy to get money.
Mm-hmm. So I can see already we're here sort of hearing two sort of different alternatives to building an independent business. One, I guess, Larry, in your case, is sort of maintaining a traditional news organization, but in a different platform. And it seems that Fabiola there's sort of a diversification strategy of developing additional products and services. I'm curious, Madonna or Alan, your thoughts about either of those directions, what you've seen in other examples, and what your thoughts are about how those work well, either generally or in your regions.
Madonna, you go first.
Actually, in the whole discussion, it's a huge discussion in the region, also in all the world, because now the most of the newsrooms that are depending. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you can speak a little louder. That would help. Thank you.
Okay. So and most of the newsrooms, they are trying to find alternative sources for the revenue eventually. But mainly they are now depending on monetization on platforms, subscriptions, and other kind of like ways to micropayment. They're doing the funding, the donor thing that also Viola talked about. So basically, we're not in the region, in the Middle East. We're not ready yet mainly we are very enthusiastic to have this approach, but at the same time we're not we don't have the strong base to this kind of models.
I mean, the strong base of readers, or a strong base of funders?
No, actually, the strong base of like the experience of civil, in the Middle East. Although there are a lot of people that they are trying right now to bring awareness on this topic, but it seems like it's still blurry for readers from one side, and also for people who are like media managers and who are reading the newsrooms.
Right. So Larry, in your case, in your paper, so how is that going to work with readers? The subscription model? Are you looking at sort of micropayments and pay as you go?
Yes, we're looking at subscriptions. We're struggling right now as we try to create our business plan to strike a balance between our impulse, which is to give everything away for free, and yet realizing that that's not going to pay the bills. So we're trying to come up with some premium tiers that readers can get a little extra if they pay, $30 a month versus $5 a month. And, what would that look like? Would that involve community engagement events? Would it involve additional newsletters that they wouldn't see otherwise? So those are the kinds of things that we're looking at. But yes, I mean, for us, it's all about subscriptions. I mean, we will be looking to potential grants. The foundations have reached out to us. We may look to corporate underwriters at some point, but not traditional advertising. But, fundamentally, it's going to come down to subscriptions for us.
Right. So in the meantime, though, is there sort of initial funding to sort of help you through until you figure that out? Is that how the structure's working?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Civil has given us some runway to get up and running. And really, our emphasis right now is to do great journalism and to demonstrate that we're worth supporting. And, we're grateful to Civil to give us that opportunity. Frankly, for us, we felt that this funding from Civil gives us a fighting chance, which is more than we felt like we had working for a hedge fund.
Right. Alan, I'm curious if you have some initial thoughts.
Yeah, I think so it's kind of hard to speak for all of Asia just because it's such a massive region, right? And this is one of those unique regions where you have highly developed markets and also very new emerging ones as well, all in the same in the same place. By and large, I think what happens here tends to lag the US and European examples by about 3 to 5 years, largely because the economics of this region, as far as media goes, are just very different. A lot of media companies out here, the big ones, the legacy ones, are owned by either big political parties, or they're owned by big conglomerates, right, who are quite happy to keep these running at a loss in some of these cases. So I think we're in a very unique situation in that sense, and that's why the speed of change has been a bit slow on this front. I have seen a few examples of experimentation with subscription models and membership models, but I think the economics out here is just very different in that sense. It feels as though we've not had that big reckoning with this disruption of media. I think it's probably about 3 to 5 years out.
Okay, so the question I would put to all of you, because what I'm hearing, maybe from some of what I'm hearing from Larry and Madonna as well a bit, is there a sort of, not a conflict, but sort of tension between trying to appeal to a mass audience and trying to appeal maybe to a smaller audience who might pay more or a premium price for access to your service? Because Larry, it sounds to me that may be going on there, and I'm curious, Madonna, in your region as well, if that's another option of, sort of trying to reach a smaller number of people who might be willing to pay more. Curious to hear what everybody thinks about that.
I would like to start. We are worried about that we don't have just visits and clicks. We are working to create a loyal community of followers that can support us. And of course, one advantage is that we don't care about how many clicks we have. The most important is that who is reading us, influencers, people that take decisions, and of course our community that are loyal and they follow us and they support us. We don't have a service of subscriptors that can pay, but we have a newsletter that is for everybody who wants to subscribe our newsletter, and we send them the information first, the other contents that appear in the website.
Mm-hmm.
And we're, I wouldn't say it's a conflict. I would say we're looking to serve different audiences. I mean, we very much want to appeal to a broad general audience and to help promote understanding for anyone who wants to know what's happening in Colorado. But we also are mindful that there are people who are passionate about specific subject areas, such as politics, or such as outdoors or the environment, and they may be motivated to pay a higher level of membership to gain greater access to news in those areas.
Mm-hmm. Madonna, I'm curious of your thoughts on that.
Actually, I would like to add about the funder thing that actually Alan kind of talked about, because we're in a very challenging area in this world, and actually like entrepreneurs or newsrooms, the independent ones, they are much struggling to find any kind of support, either for subscriptions or other tools that we talked about, but mainly they are dependent on funders, that they are mainly politicians or owners, big companies, or so. And this is the huge challenge that we are facing as journalists every day. And I would like to mention also the kind of programs that we work in the MENA region, and I'm engaged in, like, we work every year with lots of newsrooms in the region, whether in the mentoring center, that Internet Arabic Mentoring Center, or other programs as well. And the mentoring center is designed to give like digital media entrepreneurs the skills and resources and all the help they need to take their media startups and media newsrooms, local media newsrooms, or even regional, a new level. And this, as I said, like the most challenging in the most challenging region for journalists.
Right.
So and this is we're trying to train them to get more sustainable, how they can adopt these kind of new models to get in there. But most of them, they really confess to us that it's very hard to get sustainable without the funding.
Right. Have there been cases though where news organizations have managed to create at least some sort of sustainable models without just relying on funding? Curious to hear what's working in those cases when it works.
Actually, like the funding, mainly they come from international funders or the donors, whether regional or others. And some of them, they went to subscriptions, like there is a project for An-Nahar newspaper, which is the An-Nahar website. They have this kind of model, but it's still under testing. You know, it's not that we can say that we reach a level so they succeeded, or when it will gonna go somewhere. Although we had other cases like in the near past, that other, like the examples that Larry was talking about as well, they shut down, like a lot of newspapers and a lot of very good journalists. They went home. They couldn't sustain their 50 or 60 or 70 years of working in the same institution, and the institution couldn't continue.
So do you think, I'm curious whether the kind of thing that's happening in Colorado, where if there was a way of having that sort of initial seed funding to help sort of provide the runway to get started, and this is more for you and for Fabiola, do you think that's something that might help news organizations sort of figure out what's working and have the confidence to sort of experiment in that time? Basically, is it a matter of time, or is it a matter of just sort of underlying issues?
Well, to start an organization and to work that this organization be sustainable, first of all, you have to know that you have to create a team that not only journalists, your tech team is very important, is your right hand. And of course, you have to work with an accountant or a good assistance at the beginning. Because if you want to get money, you have to be very organized to do all the roles in a good way. I have a question about one panelist or participant that I mentioned that I'm not concerned about how many people click on our site, but what I want to say or explain is that we try to be very, very, very relevant, that anybody can ignore us. And we have impact because all our contents or stories appear at the TV stations, the radio, and are spread and expand because we transform in a source for them. And of course, we have a loyal community that share our contents. That's the way we work. Something that we learned 2 years after we were founded is that we have to work with administrative people since the beginning, because it's crazy that you do everything at the beginning. Most of them, I am the ambassador of Sembra Media. Have you heard about Sembra Media? Yeah, okay. Sembra Media try to train journalists to organize, because they think that they are heroes and they can do everything. It's not a good way. You have to do a team to do step by step, but in order to get money, and of course them to grow more.
That's actually, it's interesting. Something I'd sort of throw out to the rest of the panel is that this, how much of the challenge is some of it a lack of sort of skills and having the right talents on your team, as opposed to maybe an inherent issue about business models. So either Madonna or Alan or even Larry. It's like, if journalists had access to the tech team and the business people and the marketing people, does that make it easier to create a sustainable business?
Yeah, that's a one thing that we're very concerned about. It's something that we care a lot about. And just last week we announced a $1 million media startup fund with Civil, basically to bridge that gap. We feel that there are a lot of great ideas that exist out there, but we just don't hear about them because they're often in silos. And journalists tend to stay in silos for I guess we all can appreciate that, and so in doing so, fail to make that bridge over to technology and to running a business and to figuring out the operations of how something small and nimble would work, and so that's one thing that we're super excited about. We're looking for an opportunity to bring together people of smart minds and people who want to look beyond just journalism, in its traditional form.
Mm-hmm. Larry, has that been I'm curious to hear what you think about that. Has that been a challenge or an opportunity for you?
Oh, I'd say it's been both a challenge and an opportunity. It's been fascinating for me to learn how to build the infrastructure of a newsroom. I mean, I've been a journalist and an editor and reporter my entire adult life. I've had to learn how to handle payroll. I've had to learn how to go out and get insurance for my staff. I've had to navigate government bureaucracies to get permits and those kinds of things. So that's been a challenge. But we're looking to partner up with some universities, which are providing some expertise in the areas of marketing and advertising, as well as journalism. And we've been very fortunate to have some good friends in the community who've reached out to offer us some support in the legal areas as well. So, I mean, we are journalists. We are 10 journalists involved in this, and I absolutely agree that it would be good to have more support on the business side of things. We've been scrambling so fast to get our operation up and running that we haven't devoted a ton of time to that, and Civil has been very supportive in helping us to develop a business plan. So at some point when we become more mature, we may very well bring on someone who is dedicated to looking over the business side of things.
I often think that there's an opportunity here for all of us to kind of group together to build some of these types of supporting services. I'm surprised that there isn't an organization out there that is stepping in and saying, hey, we care a lot about how you run your finances and the way you get insurance. So why don't we do all of this stuff for you, for a fixed fee? And I think that's an important direction that we kind of need to head, because I think our needs on the administrative side tend to be quite similar.
We did jump into a payroll company, which is now mercifully taking care of handling paychecks and tax compliance and those kinds of things. So I took on that role for the first couple of months, but I've now handed that off to somebody else. So that's been a huge relief for me.
Madonna, your thoughts?
Yeah, concerning the MENA region, it's a challenge to find journalists with business background and skills. And this is actually what we're doing in the programs that we're enrolling people in the MENA region. Like in the mentoring center, we integrate business models, we integrate how we can do business planning into the programs of journalists. So we mentor and train them on journalism, as well as how to run a team or how to create a business plan, or etc.
Right.
And how, of course, they need to know their target audience. So mainly we have this, although we're struggling a lot of time, because this type of traditional journalists, they're always resisting knowing this kind of information, because they will say, why do we need to know these stuff? But eventually, when they're running their teams, they're going to be very thankful for these kind of trainings and mentoring.
I want to open it up if any of you have questions for the other folks on the call, rather than me asking all the questions. Sorry, Madonna, I hope you're okay. No worry. All right. Sorry about that.
Excuse me, I've muted myself because I have the flu.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm sorry for the voice right now.
Yes.
don't worry.
Yeah.
But all right.
So anyway, I wanted to see if any of you have any questions. Maybe Larry, if you wanted to sort of find out more about folks in the other parts of the world, or vice versa. I'd rather open it up to see if you can, have any questions for each other.
If Fabiola, I'd be interested. How many people do you have on your staff, and how long have you been up and running?
Now we are 12. We are 4 co-founders, 1 programmer, and we have 4 journalists at the staff, and the rest of them are freelancers. We say in Spanish practicantes, but in English is interns. For example, with this year we have 2 interns. One of them is from CUNY, that is working with us as a fellow for 2 months. Just he finished his fellowship this month. 2 administrative assistants and 1 accountant that have a schedule, not all the week, just 2 times a week to organize this kind of part of the organization. But we grow because last year we were 10, and at the first we were 6. Just step by step we grow because we have more grants and a budget that is bigger than the 217. And that's the reason we hire more people.
Looking back on how you began, were there lessons learned? Are there things that you wish you knew then that you know now? Are there things you would have done differently?
Yes, of course. We have to change the ship because we worked as a journalist in the most important newspaper in our country, and we just think about the story and our stories and our sources, and we didn't care about how the business work. How can we do to have more impact of our stories? For example, now it's very important to plan strategies to expose our stories because we work a lot. We have many projects that take more than 6 months, and they are the biggest, or I can say that they are the most important topics. We get the experience that to expose in the best way our stories to have the biggest impact. For example, we think, and our founders think, of course, that we did it when, for example, we publish something and this story is on that TV in the same day, or we have like a agreement with some newspapers that wants to publish our story simultaneously the day we publish, and they pay us for this republished. Then we have impact because something changed in our society, of course. But we are a small newsroom. We don't have a budget for more than $1 million. But we are trying to grow, and we know that grants are important, but they must not have the unique source of incomes. We learn it. It's difficult to have a diversification of incomes, but we are working on it very hard.
Thank you.
Yes,
Can I ask about your co-founders? You said you had 4 co-founders. What did they all do, and how do you all work together?
Oh yeah, the 4 of us are journalists. One is the president of the organization. The other one is the general editor, Oscar Castilla, Nelly Luna, and David Hidalgo. One of is la legal representative, that is in our country is important when we are registered as a non-profit the organization. We have a constitution legally this, but the periodistic organization is the director, the general editor or editor-in-chief, and the editors. And I have a role as a coordinator of the special projects because I don't work on the breaking news. I work for the special projects that are long form stories. Well, for the fours are working on the periodistic roles, but of course the accountant and the system, that two administrative assistants work for us for the hard work to organize the budget, to pay the journalists, because at the beginning we did all. The four of us did all, and we were crazy because it was a chaos, complete chaos. You know, it's impossible. You have to focus on one thing to do something well.
I want to bring up something back to what you said, Fabi, earlier about that you're running a nonprofit. And one of the questions we've been asked by one of the attendees is how do you create a balance between running a profit or nonprofit media business, or how do you decide which way to go? Larry, I assume you're running a for-profit business. I'm curious, from the other panelists, whether that makes a difference, whether that's a consideration, and how that affects people's decisions.
Well, we created a nonprofit because we studied the models of other medias in the region, like La Silla Vacía, that is a good model. We studied CPR and other media or websites that are in Latin America before we created or we founded Ojo Público. One of the things is that we wanted to present to founders to get grants, and as a business or as a company, a private company, were more difficult. And of course, we have taxes in our country that is very, very difficult to develop a company, an enterprise like this. The other way is that at the beginning, we didn't think, we excluded from our mind at the beginning that we will live from the advertisement, because it's very difficult. We have many conflicts with companies because all the companies are involved in problems. In Latin America, we can't accept money from them because we want to feel free to investigate them. That's the way Ojo Público slogan is, the stories that nobody wants to tell you, something like this. And we grow up as a media that have independence of corporations and of course the government. That's the way we decided this year, 2014, that it was the best way to start our media.
Right. So when your job and your work as an ICFJ Knight Fellow, when you work with partners, are you getting the kind of considerations as Ojo Público?
I'm traveling since September of 2017 from Latin America constantly, but I am an editor and a coordinator of special projects. As a fellow, I can work in the administrative roles in my organization, but what I am helping journalists is to create cross-border projects, to have alliance, to present to funders, to get grants in alliance, and of course to have more impacts in cross-border projects, because this is my experience in Ojo Público. I have created the most important projects of cross-border histories in Ojo Público, and this is a way to have more impact and of course to have more chance to get grants.
Right, so despite the sort of, changing the chip, you're still focused a lot on the actual work of day-to-day journalism.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to recognize that you have to learn everything again all the time, because I have 36 years old and I have 15 years as a journalist, a printed journalist, and in the oldest newspaper and the most important newspaper. But when I jumped to the digital website, to the digital environment, I felt that, oh my God, I'm lost. I have to learn again And don't be afraid, because the website and the internet is like this, work like this. Every time we are learning and learning and learning. And well, this is a good experience. I think that if you want to do something, just do it. Don't wait to your product be perfect, because it's better that you present or do something that is good, is well, and don't wait and don't do anything because you want to do something perfect. That's another lesson that I learned from my team.
That sounds like a partial actually answer to one of the other questions we had, which is about this process for like changing the chip from being a journalist to a business person. It sounds to me like that attitude of just jump into it and don't expect to be perfect is a good part of that answer. Madonna, I'm curious your thoughts as well, as like, how do you, or Alan as well, how do you make that jump to sort of learn those, or even Larry, how do you like pick up those business skills without, you know, the fear of diving into the deep end, which it sounds like it is sometimes.
Well, I mean, we're just doing what has to be done. You know, we are all journalists, but we're quickly learning that we have to be marketers as well. We, you know, particularly on social media, but we are, and quickly are learning to the business skills. For me personally, you know, again, taking on the administrative kinds of things that were handled for me throughout most of my career. So, you know, you do what has to be done. And frankly, you know, that part's been sort of fun. It's been exciting. I think it's a good day when you learn new skills. And I don't mind that at all. It gives me greater insight into how the company works and what our challenges are. And I'll go back to a question that came up before about profit versus nonprofit. We are a for-profit company at the Colorado Sun. I would say our hearts are with nonprofits, and I would love for us to be a nonprofit in many ways, but it's a complicated process in this country, and it takes many months, many filings, and there are a lot of hoops that you have to jump through in order to be a nonprofit. We have not closed the door on being a nonprofit down the road, but for now, Alan, you mentioned being nimble. I think that's so critical at this stage, to be able to try new things and go in different directions and see what works best. For us, being a for-profit meant that we could be most nimble right now.
So speaking of new things, this is the inevitable question you knew was going to happen when we talked about civil. There was a question about the whole sort of blockchain infrastructure that's underlying the civil model. And I'm sort of opening up to Larry, Alan, whoever else wants to ask about it. What's going on with that, and how does that, you know, or trying to figure out how to phrase that, but sort of what part of the whole sort of blockchain infrastructure, how does that affect your business, and what's your understanding of, you know, how important that is and what that really means from the context of
I'll have a go at this one, just because I don't have an answer, and I just want to just kind of, you know, lay that out there. I think, you know, blockchain is an interesting technology to think about. I think what's missing here is that we, as an industry, haven't come together and said very clearly, this is a unique problem that currently exists in media that only blockchain can solve. Mm-hmm. And I think we need to get there. We need to be better at articulating it. Obviously, there's some things around traceability of reporting, for example. You know, where did this story come from? What are the rights management that went into piecing a piece of content together? And do you have the rights to then, you know, rebroadcast that? I think blockchain is useful for that kind of stuff. But I think, you know, fundamentally, we still haven't come across a killer example around what blockchain does for media. And I think this is where we're all getting stuck. And I think we're very close to it, though.
Mm-hmm. So Larry, I'm curious, since you're basically sitting on top of the blockchain, what does it look like from that perspective?
You know, it's for me, I'm not as focused on the blockchain. I mean, I'm excited about it, the technology and that entire piece of it. But for me, you know, it really comes down to, we're being paid in dollars. Our readers are interacting with us in dollars. Most readers, I don't think, are going to care that much that we're on the blockchain versus, you know, they really want to know that we're at coloradosun.com and that they can come and read our stories. And, you know, it's going to be about the journalism. And I mean, I do think there are a lot of merits to being on the blockchain. And obviously we're excited about working with civil, but at the end of the day, it's about journalism. And that's really where our focus is. I mean, we haven't actually gone live on our site yet. We're intending to do that in early September. But all of our efforts at this point are focused on doing great journalism.
Great. So I don't know, Madonna or Fabiola, I don't know if you've sort of had any exposure to the whole civil infrastructure and their innovative method of building on top of this sort of blockchain for, like Alan said, for maintaining archive of content and other features. Whether that's something that's even you're hearing in the discussion in your regions when you talk to either journalists or business people.
Yeah, actually, in the region, we're hearing about blockchain while we're talking about economics, real estate, bitcoins, and these kind of stuff. We're in the last few months, there were several kind of like sessions that were made about how we can use the blockchain in journalism, and people, they started we're talking about like senior journalists. They started like grasping the idea of blockchain, and they're starting adopting this kind of stuff, starting this kind of awareness campaigns, how we can use this and how we can sustain our newsrooms to get more and to continue having more independent stories in the whole sphere. So it's they're small voices, but it started actually in the MENA region.
Excellent. Fabiola, any thoughts on that?
Well, I would like to be very honest. We didn't do this until now. We have like a way to get support of our friends club, but it's not in a tech system. We have an account, a bank account, and they pay there, and we're trying to introduce other ways to have the way that they can help us in other ways. I'm not sure if I understood well the no-tech style, to explain non-tech style or how blockchain technology work.
Right, or at least in this context, and I don't know if either Larry or Alan can explain, because Alan, I think you've now taken on this big project of putting a bunch of new newsrooms on that civil platform. So how do you explain it when you talk to people about?
Yeah, I think it's a hard one. I'm glad to see my friend Ichikawa-san from Tokyo is on here, and he asked that very same question, like how do you explain this stuff to people who are not from this side of the fence. My kind of analogy to this, and I think everybody kind of has their own just because of the complexity of this, is air miles. You can get air miles by basically buying tickets, for flights, and that converts into air miles that you are then able to repurpose for other flights. Now, you can't use air miles to go and buy yourself a cup of coffee, but you can buy very specific things with it. And I think this is what the civil platform is about. It's about creating a currency that is used for the cause of journalism, right? And I think that's an important and exciting place to be. If you're looking for ways to either fund newsrooms or to hold newsrooms accountable, I think there's something that's really interesting that's being done out here.
Interesting. So I think we have a few minutes left. I have one more question that I just wanted to put to Larry. It may not be directly relevant, but it's worth mentioning because we're in the US and can't avoid it. So Nelson asks about the political arena is very divisive in the US. Are the stories that you're publishing affecting how you're getting funding?
I would say it's too early to say how our funding will be affected since we're so early on in the process. But I mean, we are absolutely committed to being nonpartisan and to, we're not going to be beholden to one side or the other. Our commitment is to promote understanding and to be a platform for a variety of views. So I'm really not concerned about that. Of all the many concerns I have about starting a new business and a new newsroom, that really isn't one of them. It is true that it's a very hyper-political time right now, certainly in the United States. But I think that has had maybe a good impact on what we're doing. People are more engaged today than they have been in years past. And I think that while the media has come under greater criticism and scrutiny, we also are seeing more support. I think people are understanding the value that we bring and are frankly worried about losing independent voices to watch over the government. And I think that has been, in a strange, almost sad way, that's been something that has led to greater support for us, because people are wanting to ensure that we can provide that independent watchdog role.
Great. So we're about almost a couple minutes left. So I wanted to sort of go around the table, as it were, and see if anybody else has any last comments or questions. Madonna?
I actually hope to have like this kind of blockchain, kind of like civil project or other projects. Let's have like more discussions about a lot of this kind of topics in here, and I think it's a wide open up like a new window in the whole business modeling for the business model for journalism. So I think we're gonna get into a lot of good results eventually if we can collaborate together and if we can work more thoroughly towards this direction.
Well, the good news is actually one of the events we're planning 3 events in the Middle East region, and we should be doing one in Beirut toward the end of the year. So we'll have a chance to present more information about that. Yeah. Bobby?
Oh, I would like just to say something very short, that don't forget that your tech team in your right hand, because if you want to do digital journalism, you want to do investigative journalism on the website, you need a tech team in your right hand. That's all.
I'm a software developer by training, so I'm very happy to hear that. Support for the techies among us. Alan, any last comments?
Yeah, I want to go back to the, changing the chip, which I think is a fantastic analogy. I want to say that I truly believe that we're in the golden age of media, despite everything that we've seen in this space. And the reason why I say that is because everything that we want to learn about how people use technology, how people get information, how people learn, is all available almost in the palm of our hands. Also, the barrier to entry for us to explore new options for media startups has never been better. I could not have built a media business the way I have 10 years ago, definitely not 15 years ago. We have more tools at our disposal now, more services that we can buy on a monthly basis, in a very well-packaged subscription model that never existed. When I was starting out my career in journalism, and also more importantly, the things that you want to learn can be learned by just Googling it. You can learn a heck of a lot out there about how to run a business, how to think about things, and how to bring people together. There's incredible content about entrepreneurship, how to get started, how to work with with the community of other similar-minded people around the world, which again, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, we never had. So. I encourage everyone who's looking at entrepreneurship and looking at building something of their own to go explore it. There's such great resources out there, and ICFJ is definitely one of them. So thank you, Oren, for putting this together.
Thank you, Alan. Thanks everybody for participating in this. I want to also
give
a plug.
Thank you.
Yeah. And a lot of the information Alan said can be found on ijnet.org. I'm sure our IJNet people are happy. I'm going to make that little plug for our site, great further information. But yeah, so thanks very much, Fabiola, Larry, Madonna, Alan. We really appreciate your comments, and we'll keep in touch. And I think everybody, this is going to be on Facebook archived or on YouTube. Where are we going to? I'm asking Sam across the table where we're going to save this.
We will upload it to Facebook.
Great. So yeah, so this webinar will be uploaded to Facebook and YouTube. So you can, you'll all be YouTube stars. And you can
Thank
some
you.
money.
Wow, that's great.
All right. Well, thanks again, and thanks everybody for joining. And we'll look forward to seeing you in the next IJNet webinar.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks, Oren. Bye-bye.